This is Matt Coyne, host of The Cheap Seats. Thank you for listening to the following broadcast here on Public House Media.
This is Jessica Hammer, co-host of Crowned and Dangerous here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you are done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Crowned and Dangerous, where Maddie and I talk about all things pageant related, especially our experiences in the Miss America organization. A new show comes out bi-weekly, every other Thursday. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Crowned and Dangerous. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Good evening, and happy No Filter Friday on Public House Media. Dude, I can't even keep up with this Bryan Singer madness. It's literally unfolding by the hour. By the hour. I've been reading this stuff for like days, and it's not slowing down. Can't even get on top of it. Hello, David Bobke. I have to adjust this. This is not, get my Louis Vuitton ruler underneath here. There we go. Wonderful. How does it sound, David Bobke? How does it sound? Tell me how it sounds. Let me, can't even function with this Bryan Singer situation, too. And it's like the worst time because he is about to wreck Bohemian Rhapsody. Hello, Luis Francisco. Thanks for coming in. Oh, my goodness, you guys. Like, as soon as Monday hit, people are like, are you going to do the show on Bryan Singer? And I'm like, yeah. We'll see how it comes down. And like, now I didn't even have a choice. Like, I don't have to do hardly anything to do this show. It's ridiculous. Like, outside of like, you know, the wonderful David Bobke and everybody else at Public House Media, like doing all of the technical side of things for me, like Hollywood just writes this show for me. Like, all I have to do is sit here and have a memory of these morons that end up coming up in the news all the time. And that's all I have to do. That's it. That's all I gotta do. It just comes out into the world. I don't even have a drink or anything this evening because I've just been sitting here reading all of the craziness that keeps pumping out. Not last night, but the night before, I watched Bohemian Rhapsody because it is award show season time. I'm getting all of my screeners, and of course, Bohemian Rhapsody is, you know, a major contender for award show season. Rami Malek's already gotten his Golden Globe for Best Actor. That's definitely deserved. If he wins the SAG award, he's gonna get the Oscar. And I think he will. Like the people that he's up against, although are like big people, I don't think they're gonna overtake him in this. However, the crazy part about this Bryan Singer nonsense that Hollywood keeps perpetrating along with him is that GLAAD, as of today or maybe yesterday, I don't know, it's like a storm, GLAAD has retracted their endorsement of Bohemian Rhapsody, which is terrible because of Bryan Singer. And then Bryan Singer was like, this is a gay smear. And it's like, no. You're supposed to direct movies. That's what you're supposed to direct. You're not supposed to direct a little boy's booty holes. That's not on the directing situation. That's not what you're supposed to be directing, Mr. Singer. And the fact that this guy has been, if you don't know who Bryan Singer is, I'm sure you do, but if you don't, he's a director. He's directed a bunch of movies for Marvel and just a lot of stuff over the years that people really, Guardians of the Galaxy, for example, that he's been fired off already, and then people, for whatever reason, took up for him. But I don't know why they keep doing this. Why? Like, for what? Like, there's so many talented, awesome, amazing people running around this town and several other towns. You know, it's not just contained to Hollywood. You don't have to live in Hollywood anymore to make this stuff. Most of the time, we're not even shooting here anymore, so there's no reason to live here for a lot of people. It is completely, entirely possible to crew up on films and package films with people that are not pedophiles or are not criminals in like sexual or harassment or assault or misconduct type of ways. We have lots of people. Just choose one of them. Like, it's not. I feel like I've said this before with Heather Perry and with Harvey Weinstein. Like, this stuff is not. It's not that difficult. Like, yes, for sure, talent is not interchangeable, but you can find other people. Other people are out there waiting in the wings, trying to get to these things. And they're not going to take underage boys on yachts or airplanes or to parties and force themselves on them in a plethora of ways, and then turn around and tell them that no one's going to believe them, that if they don't do what they tell them to do, if they don't perform oral sex on them, or if they don't allow Bryan Singer to sodomize them, that, he'll make sure that they never work, or if they do tell people about what happened, then no one's going to believe them. Like, it's out of control, dude. It's out of control. There's an article that came out in the Atlantic, I don't know, a couple hours ago. Hang on. Let me try to... 12 hours ago. And then 11 hours after that, the Queen guitarist Brian May apologizes for defending him. And then an hour ago, another article comes out regarding Brian May, the actual guitarist from Queen, not the guy that just played it. But it's just ridiculous. So I'm going to read, this article that came out in the Atlantic this morning, basically, is long, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there are some key elements in here that we're going to go over. Okay, so this is where it gets kind of crazy, if it wasn't crazy enough. Singer continues to enjoy the benefit of doubt in Hollywood. There is no doubt in Hollywood. First of all, there is no doubt. Everybody in this whole town knows that Bryan Singer and Kevin Spacey and a bunch of these dudes have been running around Hollywood, either getting little boys delivered to them or finding little boys for whatever it is that they felt like doing to them. So there's no doubt in here. Much like Harvey Weinstein, we know exactly what's going on. This fall, Millennium Films signed Singer to direct Red Sonja, an adaptation of Sword and Sorcery comic book for reported $10 million. Asked why Singer was hired despite the allegations against him, a Millennium publicist said, "I'm afraid the response is unavailable for comment." They don't have a comment, but they have $10 million. That's interesting. The protagonist of Red Sonja is a survivor of sexual assault. In the spring of 1997, when Victor Veldos was in 7th grade, he showed up to school one day to find a big-budget film producer underway. All around him, this is the guy that's now formally accusing him of Bryan Singer forcing him to perform oral sex on him and then sodomizing him afterwards on a yacht. We'll get to that point in a minute. All around him were tractor-trailers, mobile dressing rooms, and people with walkie-talkies behaving as though they own the place. Typical. The movie was a part... Apt Pupil, Singer's first project after his breakthrough, The Usual Suspects. Filming took over Elliott Middle School in Altadena, northeast of LA. Late one afternoon, after basketball practice, Valdovinos stopped in an empty restroom. While standing at a urinal, he says he felt a presence behind him. He turned and saw the spectacled man in his early 30s. It was Bryan Singer. He looked over Valdovinos. Valdovinos remembers him saying, "You're so good looking. What are you doing tomorrow? Maybe I could have somebody contact you about putting you in this movie." Through his attorney, Singer said that he did not know who Valdovinos was and denied that anything ever happened between them. I'm sure Mr. Valdovinos has receipts. The film, which was based on Stephen King's novella starring Ian McKellen as Kurt DeSander, a former Nazi concentration camp commandant living in Southern California, decades removed from the war and trying to keep his past a secret. The other lead was a 14-year-old named Brad Renfro, cast as Todd Bowden, DeSander's neighbor who discovers a Nazi secret and threatens to turn him over to authorities unless the old man tells him in graphic detail about the atrocities he committed. One scene has Todd taking a shower in his school's gym, which triggers images of Jews in a gas chamber. That's the kind of stuff that we make in this town, and I'm not totally sure why. That scene would lead a series of lawsuits against Singer and the production. At least 5 plaintiffs, all minors between the ages of 14 and 17, were actors in the film and in essence claimed that members of the crew had bullied them into stripping naked for the shower scene. The boys and some of their parents said they'd been aware that the job called for partial nudity. I've already read. Okay, we're going to pause for a hot second. Oh, Roger came in. Hey, Roger, thanks for coming by. I've already done a show on Bryan Singer. It was a while ago, but I did it, where we talk about this very situation. But it's worth bringing up again because this is the type of stuff that we're dealing with, and we're going to sit around and he's just going to keep directing movies. Meanwhile, all of this is happening, more and more and more and more and more and more and more comes out. And you know what? Back in the 90s, he might have been able to get away with this type of stuff because people didn't have phones with cameras and recording and all this and that, but they do now. And as soon as one of the people that he's recently done this with comes out with receipts, it's going to be a different story and it's going to wreck a lot of stuff. So they need to check themselves before they wreck themselves. Let's get back to this article for a second. The job called for partial nudity, which they had been led to believe meant wearing a Speedo or a towel. One of the crew members later said he thought that there had been a screw-up the day of the shoot and that only adult extras were supposed to have been asked to appear naked, and that somehow the minor and adult extras had been mixed together. Lies. On the podcast version, you can't see me shaking my head, but I'm shaking my head. Lies. As someone who does plenty of nudity on stuff, as soon as, these days, not even before you get to, as soon as you get to set, even before set, you are sent a nudity writer and all of your contracts that have to be filled out ahead of time. This is non-negotiable. It has to be done. And then, according to 2257 laws, if you're going to do any kind of nudity, you have to have your ID and your face. And they take pictures of it and they make a video of you saying, I consent to blah, 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 because the record-keeping laws require any kind of nudity or any of that stuff. You need your ID showing that you are of age. On top of it, it is, I've been over this on the show before, it is, however illegal it is to have footage of nude minors, it is doubly illegal for production companies to own it. If you have so much, if you have a production company and your cell phone, say, is in your production company's name, and you snap a picture of your kids innocently in the bathtub, you can go to jail for that. That's how illegal it is. It is illegal for a production company to have any kind of remotely footage in that situation. So this, the adult extras and the minor extras got mixed together. Oops, that's not a thing. That is not a thing at all. Nudity writers are ironclad. And you're not even, I don't even want to hear anything about SAG, anything about that, because it is a labor law in general. There is record-keeping laws and labor laws in general. All this stuff has to be done ahead of time. There's no mixing this up. They knew what they were doing because Bryan Singer has a proclivity for little boys. He does, point blank, period. We all know this. This is not a big secret. Continuing. The Los Angeles County District Attorney Office declined to press any criminal charges. The suit, which alleged negligence, unlawful sexual harassment, and invasion of privacy, and intentional infliction of emotional stress, were settled for an undisclosed sum, and all parties were bound by confidentiality agreements. Interesting. Surprise, surprise. By Val Davino's account, his experience on the App Pupil set were far more upsetting. After being dropped off by his father one morning, he was directed to the locker room. Shooting was about to begin. He remembers that the locker room had been divided, a screen here, lights over there. Crew members gave him a towel and told him to disrobe completely and to wrap the towel around his waist. He was 13 years old. He hadn't even had his first kiss. I'm hanging out. Voldavina said, all of a sudden, Bryan comes in. He goes, hey, how are you? Real cheerful. And I'm like, hi. I can't remember his exact words, but he was kind of saying, come back here. He kind of directs me. He kind of grabs me and takes us to the back area, which was kind of closed off. Like, this is the whole locker room, Valvadinos gestures to suggest the space. They're doing their stuff over there, and I was back here in the towel with no shirt and no clothes on, sitting on one of the locker room benches. Bryan's like, just hang out here. It's going to be all day. Don't worry. Singer left, and Valdavinos waited for what seemed like hours. Typical. Eventually, he said Singer came back and was made small talk. How are you doing? Do you need anything? Every time he had a chance, 3 times, he would go back there. He was always touching my chest. Finally, according to Valdavinos, Singer reached through the towel's flaps and grabbed my genitals and started masturbating it. The director also rubbed his front part on me. Valdavinos alleges he did it all with this smile. Vladavina says that Singer told him, you're so good looking. I really want to work with you. I have a nice Ferrari. I'm going to take care of you. I was frozen, speechless. He continues, he came back to where I was in the locker room throughout the day to molest me. 3 sources confirmed that Singer did drive a Ferrari at the time, and we were able to verify Valdivino's description of how the set was arranged and of certain people says he met there. His father told us he remembers dropping him off for the filming and thinking that perhaps his son would become an actor. Singer's lawyer said that he could find no record of Vladovinos having been an extra and questions why Vladovinos was not able to produce a pay stub or other documentation. Which brings me to my next, let's back it up a little bit. So they don't have any record of him being on set, yet he's partially naked on screen? WTF. This makes no sense. This makes no sense whatsoever. Voldemir says that even though he did end up being used as an extra in a number of takes, he couldn't ever bring himself to watch App Pupil. His brother Edgar did, though, and when Edgar told Voldavinos that he didn't appear on screen, he replied, that dude was like touching on me. Edgar pressed for more details, but he didn't explain what he meant to his brother, who is now deceased. What? His brother's dead? It was embarrassing and I didn't want anybody to know, so I locked it away. Okay, so that's, one story from back in the day, but that's, but it's come out before. Like, it's just such a strange, like, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Like, I, as a producer, have to keep, oh, it's Chaz. Ooh, Chaz, Chaz is hilarious. This is so his jam. Chaz, do you have anything to input on Bryan Singer? And Baxter Coburn came in. Any hoozles, back to our conversation. It's very interesting how nobody has any documentation, supposedly, blah, 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 blah. Like, I have to keep, as a producer, I have to keep lists, and lists upon lists upon lists. I got Google Drives full of lists of crew members and cast and people that came by and stuff like that, especially if you're, when you're shooting on, anytime there's nudity, also, by the way, it's a closed set, required by law. Have to close the set. Non-essential crew members can't be there. It's a SAG rule that if you're going to take any stills, any behind-the-scenes stuff, anything like that, that has to be, You have to give written consent to that before the shooting day. You can't do it on the shooting day. There's all of these laws that are a thing and implemented, and the rest of us have to follow them. And it's really interesting to me that the boy that Bryan Singer was molesting in the corner, his paperwork's just gone. We just don't know where it is. I don't like all the setup. And not only that, there's people protecting this dude. This is a whole pyramid scheme for sure. This article just goes on and on and on forever, which is fine. Okay, so then after that one, he went on to direct the X-Men movie and stuff like that, and then somebody else came out against him. But that was shot down. But it's just like every movie this guy puts out, somebody else has got their hand up like, yep, he molested me too. Yet they're keeping it going. But I mean, it's just ridiculous. Like this whole scandal is going to end up robbing Bohemian Rhapsody as a whole, as far as like award show season goes. And it's not fair. Like, just because Bryan Singer gets, multiple chances and doesn't go to, I know tons of directors that have gone to movie jail for far less offensive stuff than this. Like, for the smallest things of like, they left a little, extra thing in that the studio told him to cut, or a timing thing or whatever. Like, they go to movie jail, or, they're disgraced for X amount of time, and they have to go do indie stuff and find somebody to invest in them before they get to go back to the studio level. But not Bryan Singer. Bryan Singer just gets to float around doing whatever he wants to whoever he wants, and threatening people, and it just keeps going. So anyway, the story that came out recently is that in 2003, there was a yacht party, and Bryan Singer got this 17-year-old. He forced a 17-year-old to perform oral sex on him, and then sodomized him afterwards. And then, hold it over his head, told people, they'll never believe you, blah, 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 blah. But the thing is, he's been doing this for a while. I think one of the major reasons, like, he's, not out of the game yet is because this is like a group activity. Like, there's not very many, or haven't found one story yet of Bryan Singer doing anything to anybody, and it wasn't in a group setting. It wasn't on a set, or at a party with other people, or on a yacht party with other people, on a plane with other people. It's all his buddies that do this. It's a group sport, is a group activity, and all of those people are A, enabling, and B, in on it. These underage minors don't just pop up out of nowhere. They're delivered there somehow, by some way, shape, or form. So whenever we find those people that are delivering said minors to pedophiles in Hollywood, then we will find the connection, the thread that will unravel this whole situation. To be fair, this town is bursting with pedophiles. You can't swing a cat without hitting one, for sure. He's definitely not the only one. Like, we're not just picking on Bryan Singer. He just happens to be in the news this week. There's far, far, far more of him. But that doesn't mean that we can't get rid of them, because we can. And the bottom line is that at some point, the Directors Guild and the Producers Guild need to find a way and a time and a place to expel him from both guilds, because that's the only thing that I can think of that will really, really keep him from getting more directing jobs that he shouldn't be on. There was a few weeks while they were shooting Bohemian Rhapsody that he just disappeared from set from days at a time, was fighting with everybody. And I know so many people that get completely dogged out in this town. They get thrown to the wolves for far, far less offenses. Like, this guy gets away with so much. Much like Heather Perry, he must have all kinds of blackmail on lots of people. Because, like, not that he's, like, physically bad at directing. Like, he's certainly not, and I don't think anybody's arguing that, but nobody's worth this. Like, nobody in the world is worth all of this nonsense. And I know that, like, up until now, over the past year, that nobody's really cared about people, you know, sexually assaulting or molesting or abusing or misconducting people. But now the world knows as a whole, not just in town, and people care, and it's not going anywhere. Hashtag Me Too is not going anywhere. You know, the Time's Up thing, not going anywhere. It's over. People are getting vetted. There's been a major turnover at a lot of the networks, a lot of studios, that, you know, we're cleaning house effectively. But this Bryan Singer situation is a sticky one because he just keeps coming back. It's like having a mole removed, and another one just grows in its place, and it's not acceptable. I will live without ever seeing another thing directed by Bryan Singer, and you will live without ever seeing another thing directed by Bryan Singer, because everyone's replaceable, and it's just not needed. Just like we won't even miss Kevin Spacey. It won't matter, especially once House of Cards is, you know, done and over with, and yesterday's nudes. No one will care. No one will care about Kevin Spacey. Nobody. So that's my recommendation for this Bryan Singer situation, is that he is kicked out of the Directors Guild and kicked out of the Producers Guild. Needs to go. Bye. Within the infinite wisdom of Bon Quinkly. Anyway, that is this week's No Filter Friday. Who knows who else is gonna come down on Bryan Singer. Red Sonja is not in production yet, so maybe they will change directors, but as of now he's still directing for whatever silly concocted reason. So I will see you all next week, where I will in fact have tea, and we'll try to be less salty, if all possible. I'm not going to say that I'm going to be less salty, but I will say that I will try to be less salty. And we're going to keep unpacking this bag together, because that's what we do on No Filter Friday on Public House Media. I will see you next week. Check out other shows on Public House Media. We got a couple new ones that have come into play, but, you know, some old favorites like Choose to Rise or Coffee with Keith and Katie, all those fun shows that are not about sex crimes, that are happy shows where people are happy and they're discussing happy things. Go check out those shows. We're on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, or Google Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, a few other ones, you know, all that stuff. And we'll see you all next week. See you later.